have breaking news coming in. Iranian guards have vowed severe punishment for those it referred to as Khamenei's murders. Iranian state television on Sunday confirmed the death of Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei without referring to a massive US and Israeli attack on his residence. A presenter on state television announced Khamenei's death as the channel broadcast archive images with a black banner as a sign of mourning. 86-year-old Khamenei had been Iran's supreme leader since 1989, and according to Iran's state media, Khamenei was killed in early hours of Saturday. Iran's supreme leader Khamenei was killed at his office. Now, a 40-day mourning has been declared in the country. We have breaking news which is coming in. Iranian guards have vowed severe punishment for those it referred to as Khamenei's murderers. Now we are going back to Jyotsna Kumar. Jyotsna, can you get us some more details on this update that we are getting in?
Absolutely, as you announced. Of course, we were waiting for the reaction. We had the state news agency, announcing the death, and now we have the Iranian guards who have now vowed severe punishment for those it referred to as Khamenei's murderers. Of course, we have to wait and see how that goes. And I would like to go to Dr. Kaptan on this very news. We know that now we have the Iranian guards who have now reacted. Do we see this escalating further now?
Well, and in some ways, this is an indication of what I was just saying about, is the state going to start peeling apart? Are various members of the regime going to say, listen, it's time to defect, it's time to look to a different government? And the fact that the guards are coming out and saying what they're saying suggests that the answer at this point is no. But let's wait and see. We are still very early on in this game. And Donald Trump said just in the last few hours that this is a campaign that is going to continue. This is a campaign that is not 1 day, 2 days. It may well last a week or two. And I do think that we have to keep a close eye on the ability of Iran to retaliate. Because in terms of the anti-missile defenses in Israel, the anti-missile defenses in the United States, the stockpiles are relatively low. They have not been rebuilt from the expenditures last year during the initial Israeli and American attack. And so I think one issue that's key now is, how successful will Israel and the United States be in taking out the missile sites and completely incapacitating Iranian air defenses and Iran's ability to launch missiles? So far, it doesn't look like Iran is having a great deal of success in hitting Israeli cities. We know that at least one missile, maybe two missiles, have made it through. We have reports that an Iranian missile did hit the U.S. naval base in Bahrain. But at least in terms of the evidence that we have coming in today, it doesn't look like Iran has been able to retain sufficient ballistic missile capability to launch wave after wave of missile attacks against Israel and against U.S. bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in other areas in the Gulf. And if that's the case, it's going to be very difficult for the Iranian regime to survive this kind of punishing air attack.
Right. Dr. Charles, actually, there is a question. We are currently more than 24 hours into the largest military operation in the region for decades. And in your view, has the point of no return already been passed by Khamenei's death, or is there a diplomatic off-ramp that we can see?
I don't think that there is a diplomatic off-ramp in the same way that one, for example, saw in Venezuela, where the United States went in, it grabbed Nicolas Maduro, and then it found that it could continue to work with the regime minus Maduro. Delcy Rodriguez, who's the acting president, is in some ways working with the United States on oil, on issues, on not sending oil to Cuba. This regime, which is highly ideological, and which has based its legitimacy on standing up to the United States, on anti-Zionism, it's not conceivable to me that after this attack, they can go back and say, okay, let's make a deal. I think that Trump sees this as a regime change mission. Israel sees this as a regime change mission. They are going to continue this campaign until the regime falls. When that happens, how that happens, whether we see Iran move towards some kind of post-Islamic Republic regime in a relatively early fashion, or whether we see a country descend into chaos, at this point it is simply way too soon to tell. But I do think that this is a very, very risky operation, and that the United States has a pretty ugly track record when it comes to toppling regimes in the region: Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. Maybe this will go better, but we have to wait and see how this very, very important historic military attack unfolds.
Right. Doctor, now we have seen reports of, fireworks in Karachi, but also mass mourning in Tehran. Is the quote-unquote regime change that Trump and Netanyahu are calling for a realistic possibility, or will external pressure force the Iranian public to rally around with the flag?
You know, it's an excellent question, because in general, when you have outside attacks, there is a tendency to rally around the flag. And so one could presume, well, maybe because the Iranians are fighting Israel and the United States now, they are going to throw their support behind the Iranian regime, even if they've lost the supreme leader and other key members of that regime. And in some ways, the question is, has that regime gone past the point of no return? Has the fact that they killed tens of thousands of Iranians in suppressing the recent unrest made it impossible for them to recoup any sense of legitimacy? My guess is that that may be the case, because one is hearing reports of Iranians partying in the streets, Iranians celebrating the death of the supreme leader. You know, I think many Iranian citizens have lost patience with this regime, have decided that the Islamic revolution is no longer working for them. And everything else being equal, I think a very sizable proportion of the Iranian population would be very happy to see this regime go. Whether this regime falls, whether you can see this pressure from civil society lead to the collapse of a regime that continues to have a monopoly over violence, a monopoly over the media, a monopoly over arms, I think this remains to be seen.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles Kupchan, for joining us and getting us more details on the same. Thank you.
Bye-bye.